of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item that we have on our agenda for tonight is appointments. There was one appointment that was still left from our last meeting, which was for Ron Davin to the Board of Appeals, zoning for a 5-year term, expiring 2019. There was just a question about the requirements of the zoning board. I know that Holly did some research, and you don't have to be a resident. There's nothing in our bylaws.
Come on.
There's nothing in our bylaws that says that.
Way out of town when they're cutting my taxes nowhere in hell.
And they
I'll volunteer for that job.
And I also checked
Not a
with
stupid
Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section A, which is what the state sets out the requirements, and the requirements for board membership are in there, and it states anybody who is appointed by either the mayor or the Board of Selectmen may serve in the position. So there are no legal requirements. Obviously, it's up to the board to vote the appointment, but there is no legal requirement that you be a resident. Obviously, the time has passed for any citizens petitions for this year's annual, but that's always an option for anyone who doesn't like the bylaws as they are, is to present a citizens petition to change them or to make an addition.
He's the one that screwed the town out of, why the senior center ain't open right now. He's helped to sell it for 5 months.
Well,
that's right. Find out what's going on in this town, wake up.
Okay.
I don't believe she's going to make the point of his appointment up till 14th of July.
We have, so if anyone wants to make a motion for this appointment. Last call, any motion before we move on? Okay, we will move on to the next agenda item. Chief Whitaker is here to discuss parking signs and pending retirements.
All right, you should have a letter, I don't know what they gave you, but you have something in regards to Elm Street in Ballinville. No?
Oh, here it is. Oh, no, it's not.
No?
That's not it.
Okay.
That's a no.
You don't have a letter in front of you, but I'll explain it to you anyhow. I brought it down, that's okay. So when they put the new Cumberland Times in Ballinville, part of the plan was to post right in front of that building from their driveway to the corner of Elm Street, no parking. The state road is not, well, the town road narrows right there, and every now and then we get trail trucks parking there, and it obstructs the view coming off of Pleasant Street or out of the Cumberland Farms. Right now we have them exiting out onto Pleasant Street, onto Elm Street. We can change that traffic pattern once we get those posting signs in. It was with the original plans through the planning board, just got overlooked and we never got it done. So the plan that I submitted would ask that you post from the corner of Pleasant Street, 120 feet north on Elm Street to their driveway, the Cumberland Farms property. The post office would still have 2 parking spaces in front of their road. It doesn't go up that. So all it is we'll put no parking signs.
And what, I'm sorry, could you just repeat where the exact area is?
It's Elm Street in Ballinville in front of the new Cumberland Farms establishment.
You said for 100?
From Pleasant Street
Okay.
up northerly 120 feet. I don't measure it all, so they're entrance. Even though the paperwork's not funny, there's no reason why we put it.
But the idea is still to have the traffic exit on Pleasant Street.
Right now it is. I have to tell you, I don't think it's necessary. We have it, no exits there, but there's plenty of view there. Cumberland Farms across the street exits out there. We've had some accidents there in the past, but certainly not because of that. It's because of speed coming down. It's not an issue right now. We're going to leave it in place.
Okay. Have any of the residents on Pleasant Street had any problems with it?
No, I haven't had any complaints other than parking we did.
Yeah.
So, other than some of them going out, it is clearly posted, not an exit,
Yeah.
but people still go out there. It's really a mood issue.
Well, I've seen like large trucks parked over
Right,
there.
right, they shouldn't.
Because, right.
Right. So, and there's plenty of room in their parking lot for their delivery trucks also.
No, I would make a motion that we post the no parking signs for Pleasant Street, 120 feet north in front of the new Dunkin' Donuts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. And the next item that we have for Chief Whitaker are pending retirements. And those letters, I believe, we do have.
Do you want me to address it? Okay.
Sure.
All right, you should have letters in front of me, in front of you, a letter from myself, and a letter from Donna Sands and Sergeant Paul Schwartz. Myself and Donna Sands will both be retiring effective June 30th of this year. Sergeant Schwartz, a 30-year veteran of the police department, will be going on or before June 30th of this year. So that's going to create some vacancy and movement within the police department. I have spoken to the town administrator in regards to a transition plan and posting the job within. I have to get the job posting for review. I know in that letter I said that I needed to meet in executive session, but I probably should deal with Mr. Markello with those issues. He can determine this is going to go to executive session.
Great, well, thank you very much, and obviously thank you for your years and years of service, and I'm sure that we will be seeing you again before June 30th. But, and just for anyone that missed that, so that's Donna Sands and the chief, who will be retiring on the 30th of June of this year, and then Sergeant Paul Schwartz, who will be retiring prior to June 30th of 2014. Did anyone have any statements or comments that they would like to make?
I just want to say I appreciate the relationship that we've had with your entire department, and thank you.
We've got a good group of guys right now. They work together, so it makes it easier.
You guys do a great job, and I hope you enjoy your
Been a
next
long
chapter
road.
of life.
Yeah, looking forward to moving on. Fishing.
Well, thank you very much. The next item we have is the town administrator report.
I just wrote up, Mr. Chairman, a couple of items. Most of my time has been spent on the ATM warrant. A couple of tweaks there. I'll give you the final copy electronically. I didn't want to print another copy. And also finishing up the annual operating budget. If you recall, when we met with the advisory board, they had a number of areas where it's the selectman town administrator's responsibility to provide numbers. And so I have provided all the numbers except for the debt service. And we'll be able to provide that tomorrow. So the budget process for 2015 is, at least on our responsibility, will be completed. We did get some good news today. Our property and liability insurance premium will decrease by 8.2% in the next year. As you recall, I recommended that we go out to bid, but given that we have an 8% decrease, I would recommend accepting that for the coming year, and then bid it next year. That's very significant. It's a significant savings. It's certainly going to help putting together the 2015 budget. Today, we had a meeting with two representatives of the Springfield office of the Department of Revenue, Deb Wagner and Dennis Mountain. They came here at 9 o'clock and they stayed for 3 hours talking to the town about a number of issues. We had our acting accountant here, our acting treasurer. Will Spring was here from the advisory board, myself. And among other things, the question of whether or not there was a larger deficit this year. If you recall, the DOR had questioned the numbers and was suggesting that it might be 585,000 rather than 505,000. Matt came in with some good information, And they were convinced and said to me at the end of the day that they believe that the shortfall this year is $505,000. We don't have to worry about another $70,000 or $80,000 being tacked onto that. And that was very good news for us. They also went through the proposed cuts in operating budgets that we will implement at the special town meeting within the annual town meeting on May 17th. They want to make sure that those cuts are real, that the monies are available, and that we go ahead with the reductions. We looked at all the numbers, and they've asked for a reconfirmation, and we're fairly confident that all the numbers are accurate, with one exception, and that is we projected a decrease in the reserve of the advisory board of $10,000, and that's probably not realistic. We've already tapped the reserve for 10, and there are other claims against it before the end of the fiscal year. So that probably will be, I'm sure that'll be taken off the list. We also have a couple of other items that we think we can add so that the level of cuts in current fiscal year to be undertaken at the the special town meeting on May 17th will be about $150,000. They're also preparing, we went over Plan A and Plan B. There will be either be an override, a classification hearing the next night where the selectmen will set the tax rate, and that'll go off to Boston, and they will certify the tax rate so we can get tax bills out around the 10th or 11th or 12th of May, so that the town can actually bring in revenue to enable the town to cover the tax anticipation note that was issued in January and which will be rolled over on May 15th. When you do TANs or RANs, you can borrow short-term, but any short-term borrowing has to be closed out by the end of the fiscal year. So it's very important that the town get revenue in order to be able to close out the tax anticipation note by June 30th. I think that the meeting was, we all agreed that the meeting was positive, and that I have to say that the Department of Revenue is being very cooperative with the town. They are almost going out of their way. First of all, by visiting twice in the last month, and the meeting was very positive. So if we have to go to Plan B, which means that the override is defeated, we explained what would be done. They explained what they would be doing. They are preparing deficit legislation that would enable the town to get through the fiscal year with a loan. And the loan would be about $505,000, which the town would then have to pay back, and the town would then have to accept a straitjacket financially. They would not send a control board here. They would probably not send an overseer here, as they've done in other communities. They would, however, insist on clearing expenditures, and most of the authority would transfer down to Boston in terms of what could and couldn't be done. That may seem superficially attractive to some who think that the town maybe can't manage well, but as I've said before, there are consequences to that would not be attractive, both in terms of town services as well as town reputation, and ultimately an impact on desirability to live here and an impact on property values. So I believe that it's important to avoid that. But if the voters see it otherwise, we have a Plan B that will take effect. And it will involve, as I said, deficit legislation and substantial control of the town from the Department of Revenue. I don't know if there are other questions. As I said, they were here for 3 hours. They went into the accounting office and looked at the books and spent a good deal of time checking and rechecking the data that the town has submitted, both for Schedule A in 2013, as well as the information that we're basing our budget on in 2014.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
What did they say about the $30,000 that's missing out of the account for the senior center, and missing out of the accounts, the grants, for the tombstones, stuff is about, did they investigate any of that stuff?
They did not. They did not.
Oh, then-
That's one I'm not aware of, but I mean, if there's something,
$30,000 missing out of that senior center fund, where the hell did that go to?
30,000 missing from the senior center fund.
Right.
Well, I'll look into that.
Look at the tombstone one up, who mentions these grants?
Well, I'll have a look
The
at
January
that.
fund at the Gilman Wakefield is $2,000, $3,000 missing out of that. Where the hell are all these receipts for that stuff that's missing?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not aware of it, but I will look into it. I know there have been questions about financial practices in the past, and how did we get to this point, and who fell down on the job. I did write a little statement today that I was going to post on the town blog, trying to summarize the situation and how things developed this way. The Department of Revenue does not have access to the town's accounting system. They take the data that the town provides. They ask a lot of questions. They make every effort to ensure that the data that we provide is accurate. They also question a lot about the town's debt, because you have to report excluded debt one way, you have to report debt that's being covered through the operating budget in another way. It's fairly complicated, and it has big implications for whether you have a deficit or not. And so they did a lot of questioning of just how the debt structure was reported. Matt Angel, the acting town accountant, is preparing a debt schedule that will be available tomorrow, that will show all the borrowing that the town has done, all the debt issues that are outstanding, as well as projecting payments into the future. The other thing is, people have asked, well, why didn't the auditors find problems in the past? That's always a good question. It's always a question that town officials ask when a problem pops up that the auditors have not reported. I'll quote Dennis Mountain today when we talked about audits. The truth is that what you pay for a municipal audit is a relatively small amount. And the auditors do not do a comprehensive review. They do tests. They will look here, 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 here. If they find a problem, they dig deeper. But if they don't find problems, it's not comprehensive. And so it is possible for some problems to exist and persist for a period of time or a period of years and not be caught by the auditors. There's another factor that I think we have to face, and that is some auditors are better than others. And there are several in Massachusetts that I would never hire. And you can also shop a little bit for auditors. So one of the recommendations that I think I would have for the Board of Selectmen is to create an audit committee in the future. A committee of knowledgeable citizens who will have two responsibilities: bid the contract for an auditor at least every 3 years, and hire the auditor. And then secondly, when the audit comes in, to have a public review of the findings and the management letter, so that everybody will know whatever findings that they have. Why is that important? Because the people who are audited are the financial team, as well as your town administrator. They are they're auditing the work of the accountant, the treasurer, the collector, and the assessors, and the town administrator. Frankly, we should not be the people that hire them. I think we all recognize what happened in the case of Enron in Texas, where they paid handsome sums to their auditors, and somehow their auditors didn't catch the problems and wanted to be hired back the next year. So without being too conspiratorial about this, it's good to have an arm's length between the people being audited and the selection process for the auditor. And I think that can also be reassuring to the public if it's done that way in the future, reassure that there's a maximum level of honesty in the process, and that it's more likely, although not 100% sure, that any problems will be caught by the auditor, and that the auditor will not have to pay a price of maybe not being hired again for submitting a management letter that is critical of the way the financial management team has been operating. I don't know how I got onto that topic. I was trying to answer the question here, but I think these are the kinds of things that we dealt with to some extent today with the Department of Revenue. And again, I think we're all reassured that we don't have another $70,000 that we have to make up in the current year. And I think we just have to try and communicate to the public just where the town stands and what will be done to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The other thing is people say, well, what about all this free cash that was used? Using free cash is not illegal. The Department of Revenue recommends against it. Bond rating houses certainly downgrade your bond rating if you use free cash or one-time revenue to balance your budget. But it's not illegal. Many communities do it. But I think the town can now see what happens if you fall into that trap of using it and then suddenly it goes away. And you don't have any free cash to cover your needs. So that's, I think, going down into the future, be good to have a set of financial principles adopted officially, maybe by the town meeting or certainly the Board of Selectmen, saying, here are the things that we're going to do and here are the things we're not going to do in the future. Didn't want to get into a homily, Mr. Chairman, but
That's okay. Happy for the information, yes.
All right, we got Plan B, we got Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. People are having hemorrhages because they're now realizing they're going to get more than one tax bill in a short period of time, and they didn't set that money aside. So we may not get this tax money that we're anticipating getting. So what are we going to do then?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've already rolled over the TAN and are paying the interest on that. And if we don't, as
there's been some
Bob said,
discussion. There's been some discussion that if you don't get the infusion of cash and you need to cover that note before June 30th, the town will have to use every resource that it has, possibly including asking for a loan from one of the enterprise funds. Sewer department's fairly flush with cash. I mean, it's a disagreeable option. I think you get to the situation where you pick the least obnoxious course of action. I think we're really down to no good options if that happens.
yes.
Just to add what Bob was saying, is you have a policies, financial policy, which the advisory board has had for the last 2 years, and we try to recommend to the Board of Selectmen in 13, which they adopted as a goals, is the right thing to do financially, so you actually don't use your free cash. You put money into stabilization, and you have some steps in place that they can address a lot of the things that, and I was very impressed from a citizen's point of view, sitting from the advisory board, what the financial team had to go through. I represent, to me and my board, the citizens of this community. We are not part of the members of the community as far as working with them, but we oversee that. And our recommendations, basically, we feel very strongly that we need those policies to help us in the long term.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Bob, I know that you're recommending to postpone the bid process and that it's actually decreasing. Why is it decreasing when everything else is going up? Do they know that we were going to go out to bid and they don't want us to do that? I guess I'm just asking
I would
why.
accuse them of being so Machiavellian as to do that. I think
You never know.
it all comes down to your so-called experience ratio.
Yeah.
An insurance company likes a customer not to claim more than 70 to 75% of the premium. In other words, you pay them the premium, and you're a good customer who deserves low rates if your claims do not add up to more than 70 or 75% of what you've paid in, because they've got administrative expenses and so forth, and they're in the business to make a profit in many cases. If your so-called experience ratio is high, you've made a lot of claims, well, they're going to raise your premium. It's, everybody's had that experience probably. So the answer to that is that the experience ratio is fairly good, meaning that the town has made comparatively few claims for property damage and no liability claims at this point, or they're relatively few in the past, I guess. So you benefit when that happens with lower premiums and occasionally a reduction in premiums.
So, did it go down last year too? I mean,
I don't think it did. No.
Because our ratio wasn't as good?
That would be the reason, yes.
Oh, okay.
It all. I mean, they don't take year to year, but they take a few years at a time. They take an average of several years.
Okay.
So the town has had
so
a
just-
relatively good record
Okay.
in recent years in terms of the claims that were made versus the premiums that were paid in. And so you eventually benefit from that with lower premiums. Same is true with your health insurance. With health insurance, every community will experience a period when the claims are high or for long-term illnesses and so forth, and that does have an impact upon the premium.
And this has been a hot topic of conversation about the DOR, and we had heard at the last meeting about the other 80,000, and we had heard, so I guess I would like this to be done publicly, at another meeting, that you had done a presentation in the Kiva or something about they had maybe found 127,000, and now this time it was maybe 80,000, but it turns out to not be the case. So is there a way to explain that? Like this time it works out in our favor where it's still just the 505, but last time it would have worked out where our override would not have had to have been so much. So why is it they sort of find something and then all of a sudden it's okay?
Well, the last visit here resulted in preliminary analysis that there might be 127,000 in our favor, which would reduce the 505. They went back, did some more work, and said, nope, we were wrong about that. You don't get a benefit of 127,000. Then they came out and said, the way you have filed your Schedule A involving your debt schedule, we think is not correct. And this could mean an additional $80,000, that you're an additional $80,000 in the hole. That's what we were worried about this past week. They came out, it's settled out today, frankly, it's over. No one's going to find anything more. They spent 3 hours here today. They examined the books, they were in various offices, and at the end of the day, Dennis Mountain said, we're going to accept your position, because Matt was here with, I think, very good data. And sometimes it's very confusing. They were talking about misfilings going back to 2004 for debt issues that go back to 2004. And what they have to do is research town meeting votes, see how those debt issues were provided on Schedule A, how they were entered into Schedule A in the past, and they have to make sure that debt that is excluded, it has one impact upon your finances, and debt that you pay for inside the general fund budget has another impact. And they had to sort that out. It's sorted out now, and the town is still 505 underwater.
Is there anything else?
No, that was, that's all we have, other than Holly has posted 252 Baldwinville Road on the central register.
Yes.
Do we know how much the reduction of 8.2% or whatever it was will amount to?
Yes. I just put it into the budget. Put it into the budget this afternoon.
It was 217 this year, and I think it was 235, so you're talking about, what, 18,000?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
None of these numbers are big numbers, but if you get enough of them, it adds up, you know, as they say. A million here, a million there, and it adds up to real money sometimes.
If there's nothing else, we can move on to the next topic, which is an update on the town administrator candidates. Do we have anything?
From me, or the chair of the search committee is here. I think, as I understand what the committee has done, do you want to address this, John? They referred it to the board of
Did you
selectmen.
resolve that committee last week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you gotta be nice to me. I'm on the phone with Comcast for 2.5 hours.
So this is on the agenda, but I wasn't sure if there was anyone particular that put this on. The next step that I believe that we have is for, as we said, the committee was dissolved. We'll need to compile a list of questions, I think, that would be helpful. And schedule interviews. And
You give us the go-ahead to schedule interviews and give us a time frame, we'll do it.
And I don't know if people have questions that they feel strongly about that they would like to submit on the board, that they would like to submit to Holly. Please, feel free to do that, and then we can have a list to go over as a group to discuss what questions, knowing that we have to conduct interviews in public and that we don't want them to take 4 or 5 hours, so we want to limit to some questions that maybe we all feel are important. So I believe that is the next step in the process. Does anyone have any input from the board?
I have a list of questions that I can send to you.
Sure.
And you can build.
I have a list of questions. I gave them to Ken though,
Pass that down.
so I don't know if you just want to give them to Holly.
Yeah.
Right, because I do think we should have a, like a condensed schedule that we, present or ask each candidate so that we can, fairly rate or judge based on the same set of criteria for every person. But then with each individual, there are going to be, other questions that come up based on their answer. But I think we should have a standard set of questions that we, rank from.
Yeah, and I think each person in the past asked the same question to each candidate, so, for the consistency.
So if we had if you're saying that if we had a paper, then we had the questions on it, whatever questions are decided, if we all submit, 10, we shouldn't all be asking 40 questions, right?
Yeah, right.
But then we can just make notes and have some kind of number scale, maybe,
Yeah.
but each of us would, and then we could compile that together too, right? But I just want to be clear, that's what you were saying.
Because anything that will help make the process as transparent,
Right.
fair, and objective, I think, as possible would be helpful to the community and to the candidate. And yes.
What I would do if I was scheduling it was try to, if all 5 say they're gonna interview, do 3 one night, then 2 the next, so that you'll have time to, after you interview them all, to have time to deliberate.
No, right. And to discuss those as a group. Okay. Well, I think we're all set, so if we can work on that then for our next meeting to have the, yeah, and if Bob, if you want to start scheduling.
So that'd be the 28th?
Yes,
Is that next
yeah.
meeting?
No meeting next
Can we
week.
have some days that, do you want to do this within a selectmen's meeting, or do you want to do it outside?
Outside may be easier for everyone. If we, I don't know if there are days that, of the week that work better for individuals. Or if you would want to, since we have, there's just as
Well,
many
if you-
candidates as us, if you find out from, I guess maybe some of the candidates what days work better, and if we find out that,
Okay, I'll notify, we'll notify, have we notified? Yeah, we did, I thought.
Okay.
Told me to get back on the line.
Okay, so we'll tell them and see what dates make sense for 3 and 2.
maybe whether that be a Wednesday or Thursday, or a Tuesday or a Thursday, or something in the same week to.
Okay.
You're going for more nights, right?
Well,
Everyone
Yeah.
needs like 5:30 or after.
Right, 5:30, if that would be good for me, if that.
5:30, we'll allow about 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is this going to be executive session or?
No, this has to be an open session. These are finalists, their names are now public.
Yeah. So that those will obviously be open for everyone to attend and listen to the questions, and then also to the responses that we get.
And it would be done
Did
not
we-
at a selectmen's meeting. I mean,
Right, it's
people are
separate.
used to coming on Monday.
Well, I think that if we
Or
did
is
it.
it other business to?
Right, yeah, it might, we don't want to rush the candidates or our other business just to kind of get done. Yes,
Are the names publicized? I haven't seen them yet.
the list is public,
We haven't actually.
but it hasn't been posted
We
yet.
just kind of didn't really say it last meeting, so I didn't do anything.
Yeah, we should publicize the list.
So we'll release the names and make them available on the website, and I'm sure they'll be covered by Gardner newspaper.
Yes.
We have to hire one of these 5 candidates?
My understanding is not necessarily. If the Board of Selectmen is ultimately responsible, for making that determination, and if we feel that none of the candidates are, we have a fiduciary duty to the town, and if we feel that none of the candidates are appropriate for the town, then we would obviously have to. And I know that process has occurred in other communities where they've had a list and they couldn't agree on someone, and they've had to go back out to bid, in essence, repost and go from there. Yes.
Would you be doing some research on them before you would meet to end up asking them questions? You may, by doing some research initially, as a select board, you may eliminate a person or 2.
Yeah,
I would think that's,
I thought somebody was gonna check references, like one person was gonna do that, and then is now the time to do, you talked about a Cory check. I mean, if they have, I don't think that we've seen resumes or, I mean, I think we should see that ahead of time, but asking the same questions of everyone, I think is key.
And we
Yeah.
also want to be sure
We
to
should
do
be
everything
reviewing.
publicly and
Right.
in the confounds of the law. So while, if you're hiring someone for a private business, you may be able to just, to do some things, Googling, which I'm sure we can Google as well, but things along those lines, we want to make sure that we follow the steps that the law requires, and then when we get down, I believe that we had discussed that that we will wait until the interview process to see how many people actually schedule before we do, because references can often be the most challenging, surprisingly, the most challenging portion of the process. So rather than open ourselves up to any kind of liability or the candidate's former employer, it might be better to just wait until we actually know, 4 people interviewed and all 4 viable options, they meet the requirements that have been set out, and then move forward with references and final checks then.
And I think at the last meeting, we did get the resumes
Oh, right.
and the backup material on the finalists.
Yes.
The last thing you want to do is have the perception that you treated people differently.
Right.
Right.
Because then you could end up
Right.
Right.
creating lawyers' bills.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we will be sure to do everything in a uniform, dispassionate way to make sure that we do what's required of us to find out who would be the best fit professionally for the town. Is there anything else on this topic? Okay, if not, thank you very much. The next item that we have on the agenda are moving town offices. We had discussed last time looking at ways to start making that space available, possibly contacting the sheriff's office to look into some work, some labor that we may be able to get to move that process forward. I'm not sure if there's been any progress in that avenue, or if that's something that we need to take a more definitive action on tonight to really make sure that process is getting moving.
Right, we do. I've certainly not contacted the sheriff's department or anybody, but we probably should. We do need to probably go over there and take a look at, an action plan of the things that we think have to get done. I do believe we should go ahead and put the bids together for, the roof and the boiler, and go ahead and get those published, because the bidding process is typically a 7-week cycle. So even though we don't know that the money's going to get approved at town meeting, at least if we get the process started, then when we do know, we would be able to hit the ground running. Worst case, if the money doesn't get approved, then you just don't award a bid. But I do think it would be worth us going ahead and getting the specs together and getting those published. And I can certainly use the information that Will's pulled together in the past and, come up with a spec, and I'll give it to Bob and Holly to look at if the board agrees with that.
Sounds great, and then we could put that on the agenda for the 28th to actually vote. We can look at the bid, vote, make sure everything
Actually, I was just gonna make the motion.
Oh,
to
sure.
Go out to bid once
Okay.
it was done.
Yep.
Just because that's another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Out of a 7-week timeframe to do the bids.
Yeah, sure.
I could talk with the sheriff's office. What specifically will we be asking them to do? The walls need to be scraped and painted. Is that something we want to ask of them, or?
Right, I mean, that's the obvious thing that needs to be done. And again, that's more of a downstairs issue versus an upstairs issue, I believe, because it's been a while since I've been in there.
I was in there just recently, and
It's upstairs too.
without heating, the walls have done a lot of peeling.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of things in the rooms.
Yes,
Right, yeah,
lots
the
of
things, yeah, the things that are in there are the council on aging stuff,
Yeah.
and Bethany's working on a plan to get that stuff out of there. So that's not an issue, we don't have to have the sheriff's department do that. It would just be general maintenance kinds of things on the building.
Yeah, we should probably turn on the water.
We definitely need to do that once we know it's not gonna freeze anymore, to make sure there are no leaks or anything.
Because we'll need them to put a new meter on, correct?
Probably, yeah, yeah.
Because I did, they take it, yeah. Yes.
Are you gonna rip the carpet up? It's my understanding, I'm a former student, that there used to be beautiful wood floors under there.
And the carpets are gross.
Yes.
When we looked at that, to rip up those carpet, there's an underlayment besides. If you were to do that, there's a hardwood floor, it's nailed and stapled, you would ruin the hardwood floor underneath. We had a business that volunteered to go in and clean those carpets once we decided to go in there, and that's probably a donation of, I think it was $25,000 or $3,000 in that vicinity. I don't know if that's still available to us. This is now a year and a half since that person came forward and said, I'll donate this. So I don't know, but that would mean steam cleaning the carpets and actually cleaning them up. In most cases, those carpets are in good shape, because he did go through as a professional, looked at all those rooms, and his opinion, the carpets really should be, if they were steam cleaned at all, would probably be in good shape, except maybe one carpet, and he didn't think it was that bad.
We've also had a generous offer to use Camelot for meetings,
Oh, great.
starting like July 1st, if we're not the transition was a little bumpier than anticipated.
I can't imagine that.
You know, that never happened here. But I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, that's great, that's great. Is your motion?
I'm making a motion that we go out to bid for the roof and the boiler for East Templeton as soon as they're ready to be done, ready, prepared.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Jewel?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
Are we, well, I guess, what kind of boiler?
Which is? No, the estimates that we had in the past were for a oil-fired boiler, forced hot water. The system that's in there now is a steam system. So the estimates that Will had gotten on, replacing the steam system with a forced hot water, completely installed at prevailing wage, I believe, was in the
The contractor
$75,000 range.
that bid, that gave us that, because he's a single person,
Yep.
it wouldn't be prevailing wage. He said that if the volunteers would go in, or somebody would go in to take out the existing steam pipes, that cost would come down from his estimate, like about $20,000. I mean, that's, because he would have to hire somebody. Then you're talking about prevailing wage, but being a single contractor, he would put the furnace in and the entire heating system when he forecasted that, given us the estimate.
Is there any asbestos in that building?
No,
Is there
that's
any
all been
lead paint in that
remediated.
building?
We have 3 documents that actually show that.
Is there lead paint?
Yes, right, but that's being dealt with.
One of the ways to remediate lead paint is they can end up painting over it. We don't believe that there is as much lead paint as people believe because of the way it's coming off.
It doesn't look like it's lead paint, but I'm able to tell you
Has it been
tomorrow.
tested?
I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Because what it's doing is it's flaking off in large flakes. Generally, if you have lead paint, which is oil-based versus acrylic, smaller chips, you have to actually sand it off versus, this is just falling off. I mean, when I say chips,
Well, it might
I'm
not
talking
be
about,
what's on top, it could be what's underneath. Because there's probably layers and layers of it.
well,
I
one of
just
the
thought
ways
that there were
to-
rules.
One of the ways to deal with that, okay, and now I looked into that, is to encapsulate it by painting over it once you get the surface cleaned up, so you don't have any more peeling.
If there is lead paint in there, you have to have a certified
Yeah,
lead
that's what,
contractor
kind of what I was
remove it.
getting at,
And
even
if there's lead paint in there,
when you're removing
that building
it,
is off the table.
you
I don't
can't.
think you want to remove it because it's the type of use that
That's-
building.
he's not.
If you still have children in there, I have to agree with you, but you're not.
There are different rules now about removal, encapsulating, all, in real estate, and it's, adults can get lead paint poisoning also. But it's just a whole different, when you have a contractor, they have to have like a certain license to, that's the only reason I'm asking. It's wonderful to have like the volunteers, but if you do have that there, that kind of changes the rules, or maybe you just have to find somebody who does that and is willing to, kind of cut some of that cost. That's the only reason I'm asking. That's
Well, the
all.
Board of Health is gonna test it tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll know tomorrow
But there's no
whether or not there's lead
asbestos.
paint.
Okay.
So then that will have an impact on our decision. The other thing I was gonna bring up tonight is, I've heard, and again, I've not researched it or done anything, but at the Fernal School, I know they were decommissioning some of those buildings, and I believe the administrative building was one of the ones that they were decommissioning. Should we make contact with DCAM to see, could we temporarily use that building? Again, that's a 2-move step if we are able to do East Templeton, but if we find lead paint and determine that we can't do East Templeton, at least the administrative building, it's been a long time since I've been in there, but it was a large building with a number of offices. We could probably end up moving, a good number of people into there. Do you know, have they decommissioned any of those buildings yet?
I don't know.
Yes.
I was up there just last week because they have to give all those, they were never numbered for 911, and that whole unit including the admin building, is gonna be decommissioned or sent to DCAM. And I asked why and how come. I mean, those buildings are in great shape. Part of the problem is that there's 5 or 6 buildings there, and they have one central heating unit, 2 big boilers that heat every single building. And they can't downsize that boiler enough just to heat one building. Plus, they all use the same leach field system or treatment facility, which is now defunct also. So that's why those buildings are being decamped.
It's all
So you can't just use one building, that's part of the problem. I mean, we can ask, I have a good contact up there, I can find out something.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was just for a temporary basis, you know.
Right, I just don't know how you
Possible.
heat it,
Yeah,
or what the water and toilet facilities would be if you're still gonna use. But I'll find out, I'll,
okay, great, thanks, chief.
I've gotta be up there probably again next week anyhow, so.
Good, thanks.
Is there anything else on this topic? Okay, so we'll put those out to bid.
Oh, I do have one of
Oh,
those.
sure.
We should probably go ahead and let the departments, at least in 690, know that it's, you know, gonna have to start thinking about, you know, packing up. I think we need to, you know, put out a plan that you're gonna have to pack stuff that you don't need readily available, you know, in one thing so that we can set that aside in storage, and the things that you need readily available, you know, pack in another thing, so that when the fire department or highway or whoever we come in and have move knows this can go, you know, to more of a storage area, or this has to go to the spot that you're gonna be working. So I think we need to get a memo out to folks
We'll
and
do that.
let them know.
Anything else? Okay, if not, the next item that we have is Director of Veteran Services is here to discuss the budget.
Mr. Chair. Well, before I get into the budgetary stuff, which I was talking to Mr. Rocco about, I just want to give you a quick update as far as what's going on as far as veteran services within the community of Templeton and Baldwinville. I've officially worked about 6 days, and we had new veterans, 11 new veterans come into the office, 4 with potential benefits withdrawn. We're also working with the Purple Heart Association. This will become one of the Purple Hearts towns. That should be nominated probably in the next 3 or 4 months, which is pretty big. Barry just had it done, and we're working to get this a Purple Hat town as well, which is going to be fantastic. I'm also working on a community veterans outreach board, which is key. It's actually within some of the bylaws as well. I know within the town, but at least with the veteran services, just like, you know, council of aging, they have like a little committee. I also need a committee that has to meet at least once a month to talk about veterans benefits, you know, financial obligations, to then push back up to the, you know, Board of Selectmen. But I already have a chair. He's an active duty major, still on an active component today. I have a secretary and a treasurer, so I'm still missing some members, but I should have that locked in by 1 May with that first meeting, which will be held in May. So that'll be pretty decent. I did put together a memo. The original numbers, which were presented based on, you know, veteran services, the salary, you know, of $20,000. Yeah, plus the increase in veteran services that we originally from 2014 was $60,000, with an increase of $90,000 with the projected additional veterans. Obviously, looking at that, you know, we're trying to decrease a lot of the funding within the community, and I'm talking to Will. We're looking at every avenue to where we can cut this down. We looked at the 75% off the cherry sheets money coming back, how that comes back into the central fund, where it doesn't go back into the actual Veterans Affairs Fund. It just goes back because it comes from Massachusetts, correct? Is that right, Will? So, and I'm learning this as I'm going. So if it comes back, whatever 75% of, well, 75% of $60,000, $45,000, so that $45,000 goes into the central fund. You know, how do we identify that to move it back into the Veterans Fund, or if we can do that or not? I'm not sure. But based on the amount of veterans in the community, the veterans that are receiving benefits right now, and the potential of more veterans, I didn't want to underscale or under budget, the services. Because if I did, then I would have to go back to the town manager and the board of selectmen to do some type of, article to get more money, for veteran services, which, my poor planning is not really the emergency of the community. I wanted to make sure it was up front and personal first, so they knew where everything was going, where all the money was going to be, and what was needed. And, at the end of the year, the other good thing is, we could do an article at the end of the year to if we have extra money within the Veterans Affairs Fund, if we needed to move that someplace else, we could potentially do that as well. If we didn't have the gross amount of veterans that I suspect that we're going to have as far as needing veteran services.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kaplis? Yes.
As far as the committee that you want to oversee veteran services?
Yes.
Could you get us some bylaws so that I think the Board of Selectmen would need to form that committee
Mm-hmm.
and appoint people to it?
Okay.
Okay, for a certain term.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
And as far as the budgeting goes, have always been behind the 8 ball. We never got actual firm numbers from North Quabbin.
Right.
And then we would have to make an adjustment at the special town meeting within the annual town meeting in May.
Right.
So I'm not sure how how the transition will go, but at least this is a proactive approach versus reactive, which is what we usually end up doing.
Well, you actually bring up a good point. I am meeting at the Secretary of Veterans Affairs in Boston on Wednesday. I'm there all day. It's a training process as well as like an informative, for me to bring back to the community. And I did talk to them today. And basically what is being said is because we've already paid North Quabbin already for the entire term of 2014, that there might be a potential reimbursement back to the community. Because you don't want to pay, two sources of veteran services, and one's not doing anything. So it just makes sense that there might be a reimbursement back to the community from, the Quabbin district. I'm not sure on that, but I will find out on Wednesday. And also what that would be, how that would break down as far as how much, et cetera. And I can work with Mr. Rocco on that as well.
Yeah, I do think it's appropriate for the budget increase. If John's only been on the job 6 days and he's got 4 potential, servicemen that's eligible, increasing the budget so that we're prepared